The galaxy celebrated too early. Inside the Grand Concord Hall, 200 alien nations watched Ambassador Mara Veyne walk to the center platform. Above her, the ceiling shimmered with artificial stars. Around her, ancient delegates waited for the moment they had wanted for 11 years. Humanity was about to accept Mandate 9 Ash. The law was simple on the surface. Earth would surrender its registered offensive fleet, shut down strike platforms, open military depots to inspection, and submit to Concord supervision. The Concord called it peacekeeping. Mara called it what it was in her head, a cage with polished bars. High Chancellor Sirac Vole leaned forward, his blue hands folded neatly. "Ambassador Veyne," he said, "does Earth accept the mandate?" Mara looked at the glowing document. Every word had been studied by human lawyers, engineers, historians, farmers, pilots, and soldiers. Not for days, for years. She lifted her chin. "Earth accepts Mandate 9 Ash," she said. "We will complete all listed actions within the required time." The chamber erupted. Some species clicked their claws, some sang in low tones, others flashed colors across their skin. To them, this was proof that humanity had finally become reasonable. Behind Mara, junior envoy Talon Rook sat rigid in the human delegation box. He was young, brilliant, and angry enough to be dangerous if left untrained. Mara returned to her seat. Talon waited until the noise covered his whisper. "Did we just lose?" Mara did not look at him. "No. It feels like losing. That is useful." His eyes flicked toward her. "Useful? If they believe we are broken, they will stop asking better questions." Across the hall, Chancellor Vole raised a ceremonial glass toward her. His expression held relief, satisfaction, and something close to pity. Mara raised her glass back. Her wrist communicator vibrated once. She waited. A trade vote began. A border discussion followed. A mineral rights dispute filled the chamber with dull diplomatic noise. Only when no one cared where her eyes moved did she open the message. It came from Admiral Jonas Hale, Earth Strategic Command. 4 words. "Begin the quiet work." Mara closed the message. In her mind, she saw Europa's frozen tunnels, Mars's sealed industrial cities, orbital hospitals with engines stronger than their paperwork suggested, and colony machines designed by people who had learned that help often arrived late. Talon saw something shift in her face. "What happens now?" he asked. Mara looked at the hall full of celebrating aliens. "Now we give them everything they asked for. And the rest?" Her voice was barely louder than breath. The rest was never theirs to ask. The vote passed by overwhelming majority. Mandate 9 Ash became law. The Concord recorded the day as the moment humanity accepted peace. Earth recorded it differently. The day the galaxy confused compliance with surrender. The inspectors came to count humanity's weapons, but their scanners were built to recognize the wrong kind of danger.
Chief Inspector Relm Arveth arrived at Astor Ridge during a snowstorm. His shuttle touched down between black mountains and frozen lakes, its hull steaming in the cold air. Mara waited on the landing pad with Talon beside her and a folder under one arm. Relm stepped out with 2 assistants and a scanner team. His silver skin reflected the stormlight, and every movement he made looked practiced. "Ambassador Veyne, we will begin with the armored vehicle hangars." "They are ready," Mara replied. Inside the first hangar, hundreds of war machines stood in clean rows. Their cannons were gone, their power cores had been removed, their control systems were dead. Relm moved with professional care. He checked serial numbers, he scanned engine housings, He confirmed missing weapons. He compared every record against the military inventory Earth had submitted. Nothing was missing. That seemed to please him. It hurt Talon. He had grown up seeing these machines in victory parades after the outer colony raids. To the Concord, they were offensive assets. To him, they were the reason some cities still existed. Mara noticed his silence. Do not mourn in front of them, her eyes warned. He understood. They moved from hangar to hangar for hours. The inspectors found exactly what they expected: disabled tanks, grounded fighters, dismantled missile racks, and dark orbital drones awaiting transport to scrapyards. Then one assistant stopped near a sealed wall. "Chief Inspector, I have an unusual mass reading." Realm turned. "Behind this wall?" Mara checked her folder. "Civil support storage." "I require access." "You may request it." Realm blinked. "Request?" "This section is not military inventory. It is registered under Emergency Agriculture and Climate Relief. Your own procedure requires a category transfer before inspection." Realm's mouth tightened. "How long?" 5 days. "That is inefficient." "Yes," Mara said. "Most empires discover that eventually." 5 days later, the approval arrived. Realm entered the sealed storage room expecting trickery. He found farming machines, rows of soil processors, weather shields, seed drones, portable greenhouse frames, water collectors with wide-folded panels. His assistant scanned everything. No explosives, no targeting cores, no military command systems. Only tools meant to keep colonies alive on difficult worlds. Realm picked up a technical booklet. "These water collectors triggered our scan?" "Their alloy casing causes false positives," Mara said. "The note is on page 14. He read the page twice. Talon looked down to hide the smallest smile. Realm did not smile. He walked between the machines slowly, as if the room offended him not because it was illegal, but because it made him feel foolish. "These are not listed under military control." "No. Yet they are manufactured by a company that also builds defense hardware. They also build hospital beds. Would you like those inspected, too?" Realm closed the booklet. For the first time, he looked beyond the machines and toward Mara herself. "You are very careful." "Yes." "Why?" "Because careless species do not survive long enough to be inspected." Realm said nothing after that. But from then on, he stopped looking only for weapons. He began looking for meaning. That was much harder to scan. Realm's report cleared Earth completely, but one note in the margin would haunt the Concord later. Human systems are difficult to classify.
6 months later, the Karvek Dominion entered the Vespera system. Their ships came in silent and sharp, 7 black shapes sliding past the outer relay toward Luma 9, a human colony moon with grain domes, repair yards, and 5,000 civilians. The Karvek had studied the Concord reports. Humanity had disarmed. Its offensive fleet was broken. Its border response time was poor. Luma 9 looked like easy prey. Governor Elian Sorrell stood in the colony command center as the enemy message arrived. "This territory now falls under Karvek protection. Human residents will remain calm and prepare for administrative transfer." A young officer beside him whispered, "Protection?" Elian looked at the main screen. Karvek ships formed a half-circle above the moon. "Predators love polite words," he said. On the wall beside him hung a child's drawing of Luma 9 as a smiling green moon. He stared at it for 1 second, then pressed his thumb to the command pad. "Begin shelter bell." Across the colony, life changed shape. School doors sealed. Families moved into underground halls. Greenhouse roofs folded inward. Cargo trucks rolled into empty streets and parked in strange patterns. Water collectors turned their silver faces toward the clouds. There was no screaming, only practiced movement. The Karvek scanned the moon and found confusion. No defense batteries, no hidden fleet, no military base, no evacuation panic. Just a colony becoming quiet with impossible speed. The Karvek commander ordered landing craft toward the largest farm dome. On the Terran diplomatic station, Mara watched the live feed from her office. Talon stood behind her, hands braced on the desk. Should Earth Command respond? They already have, Mara said. I do not see ships. You are still thinking like the Concord. On Luma 9, the first water collector unfolded. It opened slowly, like a flower greeting a storm. Then 17 more followed. The landing craft lost formation. Their engines did not explode. Their controls simply stopped agreeing with their pilots. Emergency fields caught the craft and lowered them into wheat fields with almost insulting gentleness. The Karvek tried to lock weapons on the machines. Their targeting systems returned agricultural labels. They tried manual targeting, the horizon filled with false thermal ghosts. They tried retreating. Navigation screens showed gravity wells where empty space existed. For 9 minutes, the Karvek commander lost control of the battle without losing a single ship. That was worse than defeat. It meant someone else was choosing the limits. His final transmission reached the Concord's emergency channel. What are these things? The message spread faster than any official report. In Mara's office, Talon replayed it once, then again. His voice was quiet. They sound afraid. They are confused. Fear comes after understanding. Below, Luma 9's children waited in shelters while their colony held the sky without firing a shot. By evening, the Karvek withdrew. Every civilian survived. Every captured soldier was returned alive. The Concord received the combat data and immediately called an emergency hearing. Mara closed the feed. Talon exhaled slowly. What do we tell them? Mara picked up the original Mandate 9 ash file. The truth. That may not calm them. No, but it will be harder to punish. The Concord wanted to accuse Earth of cheating until Mara brought their own law into the chamber.
The emergency hearing did not feel like diplomacy. It felt like an ambush with furniture. Mara entered the Grand Concord Hall carrying one slim folder. Talon followed with the full legal archive, though both of them knew most of the fight would come down to a single paragraph. Chancellor Vole waited at the center table. The Karvek delegation sat to his right, armored and furious. Across the chamber, smaller species watched with a different emotion. Hope, carefully hidden. Chancellor Vole began. Ambassador Veyne, Karvek vessels were disabled by systems on Luma 9. Those systems were not surrendered under Mandate 9 Ash. Correct, Mara said. The Karvek delegates slammed one claw onto the table. Then Earth violated the mandate. Mara opened her folder. No. A document appeared above the floor. Civilian Agricultural Support Inventory, Luma 9. Every water collector, weather tower, cargo hauler, shelter gate, and greenhouse support had been filed months before inspection. Mara highlighted the ownership category, Civilian Colony Infrastructure. Vole's face hardened. These machines acted in a defensive capacity. They acted during an invasion. They disabled military craft. They prevented civilian casualties. The Karvek delegate snapped. They were weapons. Mara looked at him. Then why did your own targeting systems refuse to classify them as such? The chamber shifted. That question mattered.
The Concord loved classification. It trusted categories more than judgment. If the Karvek could not call the machine's weapons during battle, doing so afterward looked like panic. Vole tried another path. The mandate's intention was total reduction of human combat capability. Mara raised one finger. The mandate's text required surrender of registered offensive military assets. She enlarged the relevant section. Earth surrendered every item matching that definition. Inspector Relm Arveth confirmed full compliance. Relm was present in the witness ring. He looked deeply uncomfortable. Vole turned to him. "Chief Inspector, did you miss these systems?" Relm stood. "No." A murmur spread. He continued. "We inspected military holdings. The Luma 9 systems were listed in civilian records. Their classification was consistent with Concord procedure." The Karvek delegate hissed. Relm's silver face remained still. "I do not like being made to look incomplete, but dislike is not evidence." That changed the room more than Mara expected. A quiet voice rose from the Orathi section. Minister Sava Rin. "If a civilian system protects civilians, why is that a crime?" No one answered quickly. Vole looked at Mara, then at the mandate, then at the watching chamber. He knew the danger now. If Earth had broken the law, it could be punished. If Earth had obeyed it creatively, then the problem was the law itself. Mara delivered the final line softly. The Concord wrote the cage. Humanity read the hinges. Silence followed. The judges conferred for 40 minutes. Their ruling was narrow but decisive. Earth had not violated Mandate 9 Ash. The Karvek protested. The record did not care. When the hearing ended, Mara walked out without triumph. Talon caught up beside her. "You won!" Mara shook her head. "No, we survived the first question." "What is the second?" She glanced back at the hall, where smaller delegations were already whispering. Whether anyone else wants to learn how. That night, the first message came from a species that had been disarmed 30 years before Earth ever joined the Concord.
The message from Minister Sava arrived without official markings. That alone made it dangerous. Mara read it in her office while Grand Concord Station moved through night cycle. The lights outside had dimmed to blue-white strips, and the distant curve of the station looked almost peaceful. Talon stood near the door. "Should I leave?" "No," Mara said. "You should hear this." The message was short. "My people obeyed. We are still unsafe. Teach us how not to remain helpless." Mara read it 3 times. Then she invited Sava to meet in person. They chose an old observation deck used mostly by maintenance crews. No ceremonial guards, no recording drones, just glass, stars, and the hum of old air systems. Sava arrived wrapped in silver cloth. Up close, she looked more tired than she had in the chamber. "My grandmother commanded a defense fleet. My mother signed the surrender order. I inherited the apology letters." Mara said nothing. Sava looked through the glass. "When raiders attacked our outer settlements, the Concord sends sympathy and review teams. We were told patience protected stability." "What did patience protect?" Talon asked quietly. Sava turned to him. "The people who were not bleeding." The answer struck hard. Mara stepped closer. "What do you want from Earth?" Sava's throat moved. "Not weapons, not revenge, a method." That was the correct answer. Mara opened a civilian database on her tablet. "Then we start here." Sava frowned at the files. "These are farming manuals." "Yes." "Shelter engineering?" "Yes." "Emergency routing systems?" "Yes." "I asked how to survive an attack." Mara tapped the glass gently. "You are still separating survival from defense. Stop doing that." Talon brought up a projection of Luma 9. The colony layout appeared: schools, farms, water towers, tunnels, cargo roads, clinics, machine sheds. Nothing looked military. Then the same map shifted under emergency mode. Roads became barriers, greenhouses became shields, water systems became signal towers, medical drones became evacuation scouts. Sava stared. No soldier required? Not at first, Mara said. The goal is not to win battles. The goal is to keep people alive long enough for politics to fail or help to arrive. Sava's eyes shone. Our old restrictions banned defense platforms. Then do not build platforms. They banned armed orbital patrols. Then strengthen traffic control satellites. They banned military command bunkers. Then build storm shelters with excellent communications. For the first time, Sava smiled. It was small, bitter, and alive. The Concord will hate this. The Concord approved every category. Sava looked toward Earth's small seal far below on the station wall. You planned for this conversation. Mara answered honestly. We planned for someone to need it. The next morning, 7 species requested Earth's public safety records. By evening, the number was 23. By the end of the week, Concord translation servers crashed under the demand for human emergency engineering courses. No speech could spread faster, no army could cross more borders. The idea was moving now, and nobody had a legal tool sharp enough to stop it. The Concord could ban weapons, but it had no law against teaching people how to keep their children alive.
Earth did not send fleets. It opened classrooms. The first course was called Colony Emergency Design Level 1. Its description was boring enough to survive legal review. Storm preparation, food security, shelter planning, communications backup, and evacuation management. Within an hour, 1 million students enrolled. By the third hour, translation systems overloaded. By midnight, Earth universities had volunteers reading lessons aloud in 36 alien languages. On Orathi worlds, retired engineers returned to workshops. On Valori mining stations, shift workers watched lectures during meal breaks. On Mirun settlements, teenagers began mapping their towns with emergency overlays. The Concord expected rebellion to look like riots. Instead, it looked like homework. Chancellor Vole moved quickly. A temporary order froze cross-species transfers of protected infrastructure technology. His office announced it as a safety measure. Mara read the order once and handed it to Talon. Find the gap. He scanned it. Protected infrastructure only. And it does not include public education. And his eyes sharpened. It cannot include public education without admitting safety knowledge is dangerous. Exactly. The next day, Earth changed tactics. No blueprints, no restricted systems, just principles. How to place shelters where roads naturally guide people. How to design water towers with emergency signal capacity. How to build medical supply networks that still work when power fails. How to keep panic from killing more people than attackers. The lessons spread. So did the stories. A Valori miner posted a recording of his crew turning old ore tunnels into evacuation shelters. An Orathi grandmother showed how her village used grain silos as emergency food vaults. A Mirun student designed a school desk that locked into a protective wall during storms. None of it looked glorious. That was why it worked. But Vole saw the political danger. If common people learned that survival could be designed, they would ask why their leaders had waited so long. 3 days later, Mara received a formal summons. The High Ethics Chamber accused her of mandate manipulation, unlawful influence, and destabilizing member societies. Talon threw the notice onto her desk. They are blaming you for people learning. They cannot arrest a classroom, Mara said, so they will try the teacher. You could refuse. No. Why? Because if I refuse, they call this conspiracy. If I appear, it becomes a record. He stared at her. You sound like you expected this. Mara looked at the enrollment numbers climbing across her screen. I expected fear to defend itself. Before leaving, she recorded one message for Earth's public channels. It was not dramatic. No music, no flag behind her, just Mara at her desk. Continue the lessons. Do not teach hate. Do not teach conquest. Teach shelter, food, medicine, movement, communication, and patience. If anyone asks why, tell them survival is not aggression. The message spread before she reached the chamber. Across the Concord, millions kept watching. By the time Mara entered the white circular room of the High Ethics Court, the trial had already escaped its walls. The Concord put Mara on trial to stop an idea, but every question they asked only made the idea easier to understand.
The High Ethics Chamber was built to make people feel small. White walls, 7 judges, no flags, no audience seats, only remote screens, floating silently like hundreds of eyes. Mara stood at the center. Talon sat behind her with legal notes. Chancellor Vall stood opposite. He looked tired, not angry. That worried Mara. Anger made mistakes loudly. Exhaustion made them quietly. Vall began. Ambassador Veyne, did humanity prepare civilian systems to replace surrendered military assets? No, Mara said. Humanity prepared civilian systems to protect civilians. That is wordplay. It is engineering. A judge leaned forward. Ambassador, did Earth anticipate Mandate 9 Ash? Yes. The chamber stirred. Mara let the sound pass. We studied Concord history. We saw patterns. We prepared for the possibility that Earth would one day be restricted. Vall's eyes sharpened. So this was planned. Survival often is. He opened a sealed file. Old Earth documents appeared. Early colony defense theories, civilian engineering conversions, disaster network proposals, and private strategic notes. Mara saw one diagram and forgot the room for a half-second. Her father's work, the line angles, the margin marks, the habit of labeling every failure point twice. Dr. Elias Veyne had died before humanity joined the Concord, but his caution outlived him. Vall noticed her reaction. These records show intent. Mara looked up. Yes, intent to deceive. Intent to avoid becoming another case file. That landed, because many watching species knew exactly what case files meant. Vall pressed on. Did your father help design these systems? Mara felt Talon shift behind her. The question was cruel, but legal. Yes. For military use? For people who might not receive help in time. That is not an answer. It is the only answer he would have respected. For the first time, Mara's voice shook, not from fear, from grief finally finding air. My father built systems for disasters he hoped would never happen. He did not hate the galaxy. He did not dream of conquest. He believed fear should be turned into work before it turned into graves. The chamber quieted. A judge asked, softer now, Ambassador, do you believe Earth trusted the Concord? Mara could have lied diplomatically. She did not. No. Vall looked almost relieved. Mara continued. But trust is earned by arriving when people call. Your records will show whether that happened. That was the moment the trial shifted.
Val had brought old Earth files to expose humanity. Mara had turned them into a question, not whether Earth had prepared, why Earth believed preparation was necessary. A remote screen brightened, then another, then another. Delegates requested permission to speak. The judges hesitated. Val said, "This hearing concerns humanity." Minister Sava Rin's voice cut through. "No, it concerns all of us who were told not to prepare." The judges allowed her statement. Val closed his eyes. He had wanted to control the trial. Instead, he had opened a door, and beyond it stood everyone the Concord had failed. The first testimony came from Arathi space, but it did not sound like politics. It sounded like 30 years of buried grief.
Minister Sava Rin appeared on the largest screen. She stood in an Arathi council room, silver cloth over her shoulders, face pale but steady. Behind her were photographs of border colonies that no longer existed. "For 32 years," she said, "my people lived under limitation law. We surrendered fleets, stations, shipyards, and patrol rights. We were promised protection." Her voice remained controlled. That made it worse. "When raiders came, we followed procedure. We filed emergency requests. We waited for review teams. We used every correct channel while our outer settlements went silent." No one interrupted. Sava looked directly at Vol. "You call Earth dangerous because it prepared. I ask why preparation became necessary." Another screen opened. Elder Thane of the Velori Compact spoke from a mining station control room. "Our petitions for local shield restoration were denied 7 times. We were told defense would provoke conflict. Conflict arrived anyway." Another screen. Speaker Imal of the Mirun settlements. "We asked to reinforce school shelters after the southern raids. Approval took 9 years. The school no longer existed by then." The chamber did not explode in anger. It did something more powerful. It listened. Statement after statement entered the official record. Not speeches about rebellion, not demands for revenge, just documented failure. Dates, petitions, delays, losses. The Concord had survived for centuries by keeping pain separate. Each world believed its suffering was isolated, unfortunate, complicated. Now the stories stood side by side. A pattern appeared. Talon whispered to Mara, "This is bigger than us." She said, "It always was." Vol did not defend himself. At first, Mara thought he was calculating. Then she saw his hands. They were trembling. Not much, enough. He had believed in the system. That made the testimonies heavier, not lighter. A villain could dismiss guilt. A believer had to carry it. The chief judge finally spoke. "The court orders a full historical review of all limitation mandates and denied defensive petitions." Vol looked up sharply. That review could destabilize the Concord. The judge's mirrored eyes reflected every screen. "Then stability has been hiding too much." The order passed. The hearing was suspended. Mara stepped out into the corridor with Talon beside her. For once, neither of them spoke immediately. The station felt different. Not safer, awake. Across the Concord, citizens replayed the testimonies. Families searched old records. Journalists requested access to buried petitions. Students from Earth's emergency courses began comparing notes with alien engineers. By morning, the phrase "correct channels" had become a bitter joke on 100 worlds.
By evening, it had become a movement. Vole sent Mara one private message, only one line. "I need to see the archives myself." Mara read it twice. Talon watched her face. "What does he want?" Mara closed the message. "Maybe the truth." "And if he cannot survive it?" She looked toward the lower levels of the station, where the oldest records slept beneath black glass. "Then the Concord cannot either." When the archives opened, they did not reveal one mistake. They revealed a system built to forget its victims.
The oldest part of Grand Concord Station was not the Senate Hall. It was the archive. It rested below the political levels in a vault of black glass, cold air, and machines that had recorded 3,000 years of decisions without ever judging them. Mara entered with Talon, Sava, 2 record keepers, and Chancellor Val. No guards came with him. That told Mara something. Maybe he wanted truth more than protection. The first historical review opened on the wall. Valori Compact, Border Safety Petition, 9 warnings before the attack, 9 requests for local shield restoration, 9 delays, then casualty estimates. Talon's face tightened. Mara kept reading. The next case appeared. Miroon Settlement School Shelter Appeal, filed, delayed, returned for technical correction, resubmitted, approved after the settlement was gone. Sava stood very still. The archive moved on. Orathi patrol restrictions, Kessel Minor evacuation denial, Turin medical fleet seizure. World after world appeared not as tragedy, but as administration. That was the horror. Nobody had written, "Let them suffer." They had written, "Pending review, requires committee alignment, risk of escalation, deferred for regional stability." Sava finally spoke. We were buried in polite language. Val stared at the records. "I signed some of these." No one answered. He touched one file. "I thought delay was caution." Sava's voice sharpened. For us, delay had names. Val flinched. "Yes," he said. It was not enough, but it was true. Then the archive alarm sounded. A hidden executive file unlocked, triggered by the review order and Val's presence. The record keepers froze. One whispered, "That file is sealed above council level." Val's face changed. "I did not request it." The file opened anyway. Mandate 9 Ash, Pre-Selection Assessment, Humanity. Mara felt the vault narrow around her. The date appeared. 2 years before Earth was accused of dangerous militarization, 2 years before the public hearings, 2 years before the Concord claimed Mandate 9 Ash was a response to human aggression. The first line displayed in cold white text. Humanity is unlikely to remain governable if allowed full defensive independence. Limitation is advised before influence spreads. No one spoke. Talon's anger returned instantly. "They chose us before we did anything." Mara kept reading. The file recommended early restriction not because Earth had attacked anyone, but because human colonies were becoming self-reliant, human engineers were sharing disaster technology, and human diplomats were privately advising weaker members on infrastructure law. Sava looked at Mara. They feared the method. Mara's voice was quiet. They feared others would stop waiting helplessly. Val read his own approval signature near the bottom. He did not deny it. His face looked hollow. "I thought I was preventing future conflict." Mara looked at him. "No, you were preventing future independence." The words struck him like a physical blow. The archive, emotionless and exact, had done what no speech could.
It proved Mandate 9 Ash was never mainly about weapons. It was about influence. Humanity's real crime had been making survival teachable. The file could destroy the Concord if released carelessly, but hiding it would make humanity part of the lie.
The hidden file stayed open above them. No one wanted to be the first to decide what came next. Sava broke the silence. "Release it." Talon nodded immediately. Every world should see it. Mara wanted the same thing. That was why she waited. Anger made truth fast. Strategy made it last. "If we throw this into the public channels without process," she said, "the Vol's enemies will call it forged. The Harvek will call it human propaganda. Half the Concord will panic before they understand." Sava's eyes flashed. "So we protect the people who did this?" "No," Mara said. "We protect the people who would suffer if the Concord tears itself apart overnight." That answer hurt Sava. Mara saw it. She accepted that too. Vol stood beneath the glowing file like a man waiting for judgment. "What do you need from me?" he asked. Mara turned. "Authentication." The record keepers looked at one another. One spoke carefully. "If the Chancellor confirms the file, it can be entered into the official limitation review. From there, it becomes part of the permanent public record after judicial notice." Talon frowned. "How long?" "Hours," the keeper said, "not days." Sava looked at Vol. "And will you confirm it?" For a long moment he said nothing. Then he straightened. "Yes." His voice did not shake. "I defended the Concord because I believed it prevented chaos. If the system requires hidden fear to survive, then it is already failing." He placed his hand against the archive seal. The file turned gold. Authenticated, copied, indexed, permanent. The record keepers sent the judicial notice. Across the station, alerts began to spread. Delegates received the file. Judges received the file. Every species named in a limitation mandate received the file. The Concord did not collapse that night, but the old story did. Mara left the archive after midnight. Talon walked beside her through the windowed corridor above the station's inner ring. Below them, thousands of lights moved between government levels. Emergency meetings had begun everywhere. Talon said, "People will say we planned this too. We planned to survive, not to become the galaxy's conscience." Too late. She almost smiled. Then her communicator vibrated. A military alert. Not from Earth, from Orathi border monitoring. Harvek vessels were gathering near the narrow passage, the thin route between several weakened member colonies. Talon read over her shoulder. "They are going to attack before the reforms begin." Mara's face went cold. That was the danger of truth. It forced good people to act. It also warned predators that their hunting season was ending. Sava's voice came through a second later, strained and urgent. "Our colonies cannot hold long." Mara looked out at the stars. For years, Earth had prepared for a moment like this. Not victory, not revenge, a chance to prove that everything it had built was meant for life. She opened a secure channel to Luma 9. "Governor Sorrell, wake the relief network." His answer came immediately. "Already awake." For the first time that night, Mara allowed herself one breath of relief. The Harvek thought they had found weak worlds. They had found a web. The Harvek entered the narrow passage expecting helpless colonies, but humanity's quiet work had reached them years earlier. The Harvek struck before dawn cycle. Their ships crossed into the narrow passage in 3 groups, fast and confident. They targeted Arathi agricultural moons, Valori mining stations, and Mirun settlements whose defenses had been limited for decades.
Their commander broadcast a simple warning: remain passive and you will be protected. On Arathi Colony 7, the message played inside a school shelter where children sat with emergency packs between their knees. A teacher named Lyra Sen muted the broadcast. Then she looked at the lesson plan Earth had translated 2 weeks earlier. Step 1, keep everyone breathing slowly. Step 2, confirm water and medicine. Step 3, trust the grid. Outside, the first Karvek landing craft entered atmosphere. Then the colony changed. Water towers unfolded signal veins, grain silos sealed into pressure-safe food vaults, cargo roads lit with evacuation arrows. Old storm barriers rose from beneath fields, linking into a curved shield over the main town. None of it looked like a fortress. It looked like a community refusing to die. In Valori space, miners activated gravity anchors built from ore stabilization equipment. In Mirun settlements, school basements became command shelters. Across the passage, human-designed emergency software connected systems that had never been called military. Mara watched from the Grand Concord Hall, where the emergency session had been interrupted by live feeds. Vol stood beside her now, not across from her. That alone would have been unthinkable a week ago. "Concord Fleet response," he demanded. 17 hours, an officer said. Mara opened another channel. Earth Relief Network status. Governor Sorrell appeared, older and calmer than the day Luma 9 went silent. Active across 32 sites. The Karvek fired on Arathi Colony 7. Their first shot struck the shield and dispersed into harmless light. The school shelter shook. Lyra Sen held out one hand. The children kept breathing. A second Karvek wave tried to land near the medical district. Cargo drones rose from storage yards, not armed but fast. They filled the sky with reflective chaff, emergency beacons, and false landing markers. The Karvek craft veered toward empty ground. In the Grand Concord Hall, delegates watched in stunned silence. They were not watching Earth save the galaxy with secret battleships. They were watching ordinary places survive. A farm, a school, a mine, a clinic. The Karvek commander broadcast furiously. "These are illegal defense systems." Mara answered on the open channel. "They are civilian emergency systems under current Concord law. Stop attacking civilians, and they will stop interfering with your attack." For half a second, even Talon looked at her. The line spread instantly across public channels. Then the Concord fleet arrived early. Not because its ships were faster, because humanitarian maps had identified shorter emergency corridors years earlier, filed under disaster logistics, and approved by the same offices that never read the appendices. The Karvek commander saw the fleet, the failed landings, the shielded colonies, and the entire Concord watching. He withdrew. No grand battle followed, no enemy flagship exploded. The victory was quieter than that. Families left shelters alive. Doctors reopened clinics. Miners counted their crews and found no one missing. On Arathi Colony 7, Lyra Sen stepped outside with her students and watched Karvek ships vanish from the sky. One child asked, "Did Earth save us?" Lyra looked at the shield towers, the marked roads, the packed shelters, and the people who learned what to do. "Earth helped," she said. "We saved us." In the Concord Hall, Sava heard the line and began to cry. Mara closed her eyes. That was the point. Not dependence, capacity. Not domination, dignity. The galaxy had just seen the future, and it did not look like conquest. It looked like people ready before the sirens began. After the narrow passage, the final vote was no longer about humanity. It was about whether the Concord could become worthy of peace. The final vote happened 3 days after the narrow passage. No one arrived laughing. No one arrived certain. The Grand Concord Hall filled slowly, heavily, like a place where history had become too large for the walls. Mara stood beside Talon in the human delegation box. He looked older than he had when Mandate 9 Ash passed. So did she. At the center platform, Vole rose. He did not look like a ruler now. He looked like someone who had finally understood that responsibility was heavier than authority. "The Chamber will vote on the Restoration Accord," he said. The new law appeared above the floor. It ended permanent defenselessness. It reopened old limitation mandates. It legalized civilian protection systems under transparent standards. It required the Concord to answer emergency petitions within fixed time. It allowed member worlds to build shelters, shields, evacuation grids, medical networks, and local protection systems without begging for permission to survive. It did not make the galaxy perfect. No law could, but it removed the lie that weakness was the same as peace. Sava spoke first. "My people waited 32 years to hear that survival was not a crime," she said. "Today I vote for every world that obeyed and still buried its children." The hall remained silent. Then the Valori voted yes. The Mirun voted yes. Kessel Minor voted yes. Others followed. Some abstained, some refused, some still feared change more than failure. That was expected. Progress rarely arrived clean. Before the final count, Vole turned to Mara. "Ambassador Veyne, Earth may address the chamber." Mara walked to the center. She looked at the carved seals on the great doors. Earth's seal still sat near the bottom, small and new, but now many eyes followed her gaze. "When Earth accepted Mandate 9 Ash, many believed we had been defeated. The truth is less dramatic. We were afraid." No one moved. "We were afraid help would come too late, afraid our colonies would become case files, afraid that what happened to others would happen to us, while polite people searched for the correct procedure." She looked toward Sava. "So we prepared, not because we wanted to rule, not because we wanted war, because our history taught us that hope is not a plan unless someone builds it." Talon lowered his eyes. Mara continued. "Humanity does not ask the Concord to become human. We ask it to become honest. Peace is not the absence of weapons. Peace is the presence of safety." The vote closed. The Restoration Accord passed. For a few seconds, the hall stayed silent. Then, from somewhere in the Orathi section, someone began to weep, not weakly, freely. Months passed. Luma 9 planted wheat in the field where Karvek landing craft had fallen safely from the sky. Orathi engineers rebuilt shield towers. Valori miners turned emergency tunnels into permanent shelters. Mirun children practiced drills that felt boring, which meant they were working. Concord schools taught the narrow passage as the day survival changed law. 1 year later, Vole resigned. His final act was not a speech. It was an order moving Earth's seal from the lower row to the central ring. Mara visited the hall after everyone had gone. Talon found her standing beneath it. "It looks strange up there," he said. "Good," Mara replied. He hesitated. "Do you think your father would be proud?" Her throat tightened. She thought of hidden work, careful plans, old fear transformed into shelter, and a galaxy learning that strength did not have to arrive as a gun. "Yes," she said, "but he would tell us to keep reading the small print." Talon laughed softly. Mara looked once more at Earth's seal. The galaxy had ordered humanity to disarm. Humanity had obeyed. Then it taught the galaxy a better question. Not who has the strongest weapon, who makes sure the helpless are not helpless anymore. The galaxy ordered humanity to surrender every weapon, but humans had already hidden their greatest defense inside hospitals, farms, schools, and shelters. May this message strengthen your faith and renew your hope. Thank you for staying until the end. If this touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe to Astro Realms for more uplifting content. May God's blessings overflow in your life. See you soon.